Hi, everybody. So welcome to our week 7 panel discussion with your instructors. And, we are approaching the end of the quarter and the final project, which kind of culminates, it's a culmination of what you learned into sort of a free form assignment, which could be challenge. It could be also inspirational. So I hope we can kind of a little bit discuss questions related to, what it means to create a musical composition. In the next weeks, we also touch a little bit about concepts of creativity and surprise, expectations. So we'll kind of keep talking about these aspects more as a theoretical question, but really now when we already had an experience, we talked about what is sound, how we perceive it, what it means. We had, an exercise of group music making, which is something that you're doing right now. And for the final project, you can actually exploit any of the tools and concepts that you learned, and then also explain them in some way. So the questions I would like kind of to discuss and today are related to kind of basic notions of what is creativity. I mean, basically, how are you being creative in your music making, in your research, or in any other field? And kind of related points to think about would be, what drives you to do, your own creation in sense of agency, creative intent. And when you create something, you create structure from a lot of ideas. And this structure is communicated maybe to the audience, maybe to other musicians. So do you use this in an improvised way? Do you create any sketches? When we did sound walks, we created sort of a sketch, which was a base for a composition, or maybe it was sort of a score-like representation. We had gestures that then other musicians relate to. So there are also aspects of, social and group dynamics, how to create interesting discourse, relations between voices. So if anybody has any advice on making projects in a group, so if you decide to make a group project, or you have experience in making group projects, so that's if you decide that was for the students, but I mean for our TAs, any kind of sharing any of advice or experience of working in a group. And finally, in the rubrics of the final projects, we talk about having a write-up. Now, write-up means that you need to be a little bit critical and be able to explain your project. So there is a question of how you communicate your work to others, whether it's communicating to partners in your group while you're doing the creation, or you think about the audience when you create. So basically, questions of being self-referential, referential to others. So when we talk about in the write-up doing comparative analysis or critical analysis, it's really kind of how do you explain what you did? What does it mean to be critical about something in your own work, or as an audience being critical towards other work? And critical doesn't mean in a bad sense. Critical would be basically how you try to understand what's going on. So I'll pass the mic in a virtual way to our TAs, and if anybody would like to have a head start on this. As usual, Gabriel.
Yeah.
That's how the engine was.
I mean, it's tricky to talk about something so central to music making as creativity, because it's such an enormous part of the field, and it's so fundamental but yet difficult to explain and kind of put your finger on it. I think a lot of my personal work is, and I feel like this happens with a lot of artists and even scientists, it's iterations and remixes of other people's works. I mean, one of the sayings is like, there's nothing new under the sun, right? But I kind of just grab things that I'm interested in and modify them and combine them with other things that I'm interested in. And I find that through that process, I can inject some of my own personality and voice into an art project or a music systems design project. And at least for me, the part of it that concerns society, has to do a lot with like low cost interfaces and accessibility and things of that nature, since I'm from Bolivia. And I think a lot about the students that I might potentially teach there someday not having the same access as we do. And then I guess lastly, with regards to collaborating with other people, I think one of the most difficult parts is the psychology of it, and everybody kind of wants to put their name on it and make sure that they're recognized for their contributions to it. And I think a lot of it has to do with listening. Like having a successful project has to do a lot with listening and making sure everybody's feeling like they're contributing and they're being heard. When somebody gives a suggestion as, oh, let's make this part of the song in the key of B flat, and it's like not completely ignoring them and seeing how that could work, and like trying to modify things in order to fulfill everybody's vision a little bit. Yeah, so that's my take.
And I guess not many people will do specifically, insist on the key of B flat,
Yeah.
but there could be some more
Yeah, it's
options
just
or personalities, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so like for me, like the creatives come from several kinds of layers. And I think like the first, I'm also in this kind of steps, like I think the creative is from analogy from the other files. Like if you take an analogy from other kinds of file, other than music, other than research kind of file, we can have some novelty here. For example, like in the creative music, I create some piano pieces, but sometimes I will create some kind of like environmental sound or environmental pieces. And all this kind of thing tries to mimic like the feelings when you touch into the forest, when you go to some kind of place and you hear some recordings acoustically. And I want to add this kind of thing into the music creation. And I also want to add some effect, trying to mimic the some kinds of like the environmental surroundings and some kinds of like the position, some kinds of like the some occurrence of different kind of events when you hear some kinds of like this type of music. I think the thing is try to take an analogy of the true feelings from the real world if you go into some place, if you hear some music. So this kind of things is the creative that when I do the music production. But for the music, for the research also, like I take some I'm love to like take some analogy from all kinds of files. For example, like generation of the music, some kinds of the process of the sketching in the image, because sometimes you really draw some lines in the image and you want the model to complete, you want the machine or computer to complete the whole kind of image pieces based on your on your drafting or sketching. But some kinds of thing can also be happens in the music generation, like you want to add some notes, add some kind of context, but you want the machine to complete the left part. So that's kind of things I'm currently doing for my research. And also some kinds of like example are presented in a previous discussion, or some kinds of like work are presented in my line. Yeah. So and the discussion actually can definitely help you to bring out more ideas, because when I do some discussion with my friends, with my research, with my colleague researchers, also with the Professor Stopnov and other professors, actually I will learn a lot from different kind of ideas, because in discussion, actually we are brainstorming regardless of reporting the progress. And we are also discussing some kinds of like some kinds of like free thinking of like all kinds of like the possibility of the research, some kinds of applications, some kinds of ways we can do. And none of these kind of things can be realized currently, but maybe in the future. So I think you can light up your inspirations because of the discussion, because all people have a different mind. So you can have learn a lot from this kind of like the discussion. And I think like the communication of my style is like, I try to report some kind of a progress with other person, including professors and my colleague researchers. And but I'm also want to light up some kind of questions to them and to see if they have some opinion on it. And this kind of things, when I chat with others, we've discussed with main kinds of like research, also creating music with others. And I think it will be efficient, because in one time you have some progress, and in other time you also want some feedback from them. So I think they would be a good point if you want to discuss with others. And also other people will also notice that, oh, you actually did something and you need some helps, and you can have some discussion more after that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Jingwei, maybe you go next. Does that work?
Sure. So I want to take the aspect from the rubric. So in the rubric, you are required to have the originality, complexity, and communication, I believe. So for the originality, it's also the creativity. So in the final project, the students can choose to do this project by themselves or in a group. So your improvisation should be different if you do it by yourself or with a group of people. So we call it collective improvisation when you do the improvisation with other people. So when you do that thing with other people, it's not a way to compromise your own creativity. You should have some new ideas being inspired by this group improvisation. This is the purpose, and your creativity is shaped and transformed by your environment, by the surroundings, also by the audience, by other people. So this is what I want to say about this. And for complexity, you can do a well-formed music very easily, but you have to show your own effort in your piece, right? So how much effort? Because art is delicate. You can do something easy, which is fine, but if you want to get a high point, you have to show your efforts and show how you understand about that. And for the communication, this is very important. So think about music as language. If you use your own language, maybe it's very difficult because, for example, you use like in English, but other people don't know about English. So you have to deliver this explicitly to your audience. What do you mean by creating this piece? So think about the process like encode and decode. If you use a really difficult code for your music, then you want other people to understand. You have to do this. You have to explain how other people can decode this thing. So this can be achieved by your write-up. You have to write down how you want other people to understand this. So this is what I want to see.
Thank you. Yeah, that was very relevant for the actual final project. And thank you for going through the points. And Stella, would you want to share your point of view?
So, yep. So first one, I want to think about what is creativity. And I think creativity is somewhat related to unpredictability. So I think those two are definitely different. But for example, when I study emotion-based music and audio understanding, I have realized that we can be creative based on unpredictable aspects. So for example, when I study machine learning generated model for automatic music composition, the goal is that predict the next level sequence in the musical structure. But if the model didn't predict well, sometimes we could get some interesting musical sequence that we didn't expect before. And another example can be the connection between music and emotion. And emotion is a subjective aspect of humans, so hard to measure or quantify it for the computation. So when I try to understand some emotional aspect in music, I need to decide which aspect I want to extract from the music and audio, and the result can be varied based on which aspect I use for emotion recognition. So based on my studies, the combination of emotion and unpredictability makes me creative when I'm doing some computer music study. And today we are talking about how we can communicate our study or our finding or our material to others. So I want to say two things. First one is participating in some community. So as a like grad student or as a like research student, we are participating a lot of conference or some study group to share our studies or our finding and getting some feedback from others. And then we actually we learn a lot of things from the discussion, because when I need to present something to others, I need to make some clear presentation, and then during that process, I can be realize, oh, this concept I need to study more, or something like that. So presenting something to the community is one way to have good communication. And second thing is when I make some slides or presentation, I always think about assuming that I need to present this one to the teenagers. In the case I cannot assume they know about machine learning or they know about audio signal processing, or sometimes I need to explain really details or really basic one by one. So I think that's one strategy I use for making some slides or presentation to others. So those are my thought regarding the communication aspect when we need to communicate with others.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for kind of mentioning, this idea of how can you plan your work in a way that will be communicated to others, right? Understandable to others. And I don't know if this is a quote by Einstein or somebody, but there is some scientists said that if you cannot explain your work to a 5-year-old, probably you don't know what you're doing yourself. So, but when we do our projects, when we do our research and creation, I think, of course, we end up with pretty elaborate or sophisticated works that it takes time to analyze, but the principles should be there, right? And maybe my only other word about this whole idea, inspired by what I heard from you, is that sometimes, especially in music that you're not familiar with, that might have a lot of complexity, a lot of structures. I think, at least for myself, what I find out is that a repeated listening, this is really for work of somebody else, but also for your own work. If you keep listening and trying to find more structure and more complexity in a work, and it always engages you, that means that there is something going on there, right? I mean, if you listen to work and the second time is already boring, then probably that either you are not able to find the structure, or maybe there wasn't. But if you understand the work and you can understand it on some kind of a approximate level, right? And maybe you can explain it. And the notes can actually help explain this and drive you into what to listen for. So one thing about, great works, at least that I found out, is that even if it's a style that you're not familiar, it's a culture that you're not familiar with, if it intrigues you into something, you feel that there is some kind of an idea, and then you listen again and you find that there is more to it, and you listen to this a third time and fourth time, and you always find more layers of information. At least for me, it's kind of a way to judge, the fact that, yeah, there is something deep going on in this work, and every time you just kind of peel a layer and you discover more. I think that's another way of being self-critical, or ways of analyzing other people's work. I think it's really part of, as I said in the beginning, kind of culmination of this class is not just that you learn about music or how to listen to music or how to create music and some technical skills. It's really that music making involves this desire to express yourself. And, this class provides an opportunity to kind of do this in a very uninhibited way. Basically, as we said, almost anything can be done and considered musical as long as you have a creative intent. And if you do this with, deep thinking, I think you'll be not only fine, you'll be happy and take pride of the project. So I'd like to thank the instructors, and And see you in the next weeks of the course. Okay. Bye-bye.